Ladies and gentlemen, this is the New York Times. This is a headline, by the way, that I have no problem with. But if you are a Democrat, you read this and you say, oh my goodness, a Trump loyalist? Notice, however, that whenever there's a New York Times or Washington Post title of an article, it'll always be, if there's somebody that shares President Trump's values or wants, for example, a foreign policy that is scaled back, they'll say Trump loyalist. They will never say Biden loyalist. They will never say loyalist of President Obama or Bush loyalist. Because President Obama and Bush were two sides of the same coin. Trump came in, reversed U.S. foreign policy, first president to step foot in North Korea, to begin a true détente between North and South Korea, where President Moon Jae-in stated he deserved the Nobel Peace Prize. And there are a great many, you have the Abraham Accords, peace between Israel, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco. You have so many Serbia and Kosovo economic deals between those two countries. You have so many lasting foreign policy achievements. Because President Trump came in, did things his way. He made a lot of missteps in terms of communication, mainly. And the media at the end of the day got the upper hand. But you never get, here, national security installs Trump loyalist as top lawyer days before Biden takes office. The acting defense secretary was ordered by the agency to appoint Michael Ellis, who has been accused of having a hand in one of Trump administration's most contentious legal decisions. Every single thing. First of all, you know what this man did? Oh my God, it was such a big deal. So hit subscribe to this channel right now, to my Patreons, to my new Patreons. Thank you. It is such a nutty time, ladies and gentlemen. Your help, your support via Patreon is so important, and I just want to thank you very, very much to my new Patreons. Thank you so much. If you do want to support my voice, my Patreon is below in the pinned comment and on my website, hagoodman.com. You can read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, other publications. You can see my debates. I've been 2 years ahead of everyone, ladies and gentlemen, in telling people not to adhere to absurd message boards. And also telling people 2 years ago, I deleted my Twitter account and Facebook account 2 years ago. I told everyone to do that. And now we see what's going on. But, and hit subscribe to this channel. Get this segment viral. And thank you for your support, ladies and gentlemen. I'll read you this. The National Security is moving forward with hiring a Trump administration loyalist, the agency said on Sunday, after the acting defense secretary ordered he be made the agency's top lawyer. Christopher C. Miller, the acting defense secretary, gave General Paul M. Nakasone, the agency's director, until 6 p.m. on Saturday to install Michael Ellis as its general counsel. The agency said in a statement on Sunday that Mr. Ellis accepted his final job offer yesterday afternoon. National Security is moving forward with his employment. He has not been formally sworn in, and it is not clear when that would happen. Mr. Ellis has been accused of having a hand in one of the more contentious legal decisions of the Trump administration made. You want to know what this contentious? You want to know what the New York Times calls contentious? And this is what this is what President Trump could have, he should never have gone after LeBron James. He should never have insulted NFL players. In hindsight, there was a way to, if he disagreed with the anthem protest, he didn't have to do those things. He could have created a national dialogue the past couple of months. He could have gone on, think outside of the box. He could have done so many things differently to where we wouldn't have had this situation now where everybody from Josh Hawley to the president himself has been banned off of things. Now they're trying to consolidate political power by suppressing thought, emotion, These are the true authoritarians. The true authoritarians are on the left. They just want to ban and suppress and silence people. They want to literally, when they deperson or cancel out a human being, I mean, you can't get more nefarious than that, but that's the left. But here, Mr. Ellis has been accused of having the attempt to stop John R. Bolton, the former national security advisor, from publishing a book about the president. Yeah, if he had classified intelligence there, where were the books that were written exposing President Obama's administration before a failed catastrophe in the NATO intervention? You could look up, go to all the foreign affairs, foreign policy magazine, articles. You can look up the same people who would vote for President Obama a million times over have blamed him for leading to the destruction of a country, in turning Libya into a failed state. The thing is, liberals generally don't care. It's not important to them. So Trump possibly working with Russia, which is a fantasy, tinfoil hat fantasy, that was far more important, or far more, that was higher up the hierarchy of importance than what President Obama did with the failed NATO intervention. That's an impeachable offense by today's standards. I mean, it should be by any standard. If you engage in a military intervention within a country under the guise of protecting the citizens of that country, and then you cause turmoil and chaos and mayhem for a decade after because of that intervention, where human beings are being bought and sold because of your foreign policy, that should be an impeachable offense. Okay? So if they're gonna blame Trump for what took place in Washington, D.C., which I condemn, the loss of life I condemn, and my God, it was an unmitigated disaster politically. Mainly, it was the loss of life. That's the most important issue. Those 5 people should be alive today. But it was a catastrophe politically. But if you're going to blame Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and Trump, are you going to blame President Obama for Libya? Are the lives lost his fault? The suffering, the sorrow, the destabilizing of that region of the world, is that his fault? What about the Lincoln Project people? Do they have the lives lost on their hands? Do they have the catastrophe of Bush's foreign policy on their shoulders? Are they directly responsible now? Because Trump is directly responsible. He incited and compelled people to do illegal things. What do you think the Lincoln Project people did? They literally pushed for the most tragic foreign policy catastrophe since Vietnam. Over a million Americans were injured in the past 20 years. Thousands and thousands have lost their lives. Hundreds of thousands have had traumatic brain injuries. Far more than that have had PTSD. Is that all the fault of the Lincoln Project? Because according to today's standards, Trump directly caused what took place in Washington. So are you going to blame President Obama and the Lincoln Project people for any far greater tragedies and catastrophes? See, Democrats don't apply the same standard of logic that they utilize against Trump upon themselves, which makes them the biggest hypocrites of all time. But that's the way they roll. And you've given them, and now, unfortunately, the people who did what they did in Washington, D.C., have given Democrats the ability to just, not only become the hypocrites that they are and the disingenuous, duplicitous political operatives they are, but this is a moment in time where the Democratic Party is drunk with political power. It's not going to last. It's not going to last because they have to govern. And if Biden governs in the same manner as President Obama, you'll have the same issues and problems and longing for somebody like President Trump, who reverses U.S. foreign policy, who addresses trade imbalances with tariffs, or rips up the Trans-Pacific Partnership and creates the USMCA, who signs an executive order combating anti-Semitism on college campuses, which is what President Trump did. President Trump also allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. So how on earth is he a racist? So, I mean, like, you usually, and made that funding permanent. You usually judge people by their actions, not their words. What President Trump should have realized is in politics, the game is played with words and not actions. Trump's actions were better than President Obama's. His accomplishments were more profound than President Obama's, and infinitely more better than Bush, the worst president we've ever had. But his words were volatile, and American voters would rather have a Bush. Unfortunately, a great many American voters, even Republicans, unfortunately, even conservatives like Mitt Romney and Ben Sasse, would rather have a Bush. But a Bush would rather have a Bush. George W. Bush. I'm just quoting Borat. Would rather have George W. Bush, a man who presided over global tragedies, global catastrophes, an economy that was on the brink of a depression. They would rather have Bush because he paints now and he plays the game. And the Lincoln Project people went after veterans. They went after anyone. They called a triple amputee Vietnam hero, veteran hero, war hero, Vietnam veteran and hero, Max Cleland. You want to know the man who went after Max Cleland? He now works for the Daily Beast. They're okay with that. The Lincoln Project people, by the way, worked alongside others. Maybe they didn't want this, but they worked alongside others that wanted a marriage amendment. The Bush administration ran on a marriage amendment. So when they weren't toppling regimes and destabilizing entire regions of the world, causing untold chaos and mayhem and sorrow and suffering, they were also running on a bigoted platform. All is forgiven, do you understand? One of them works for the Daily Beast, the other one's always on Twitter, the other one is like an MSNBC pundit or whatever. So it's like, the way the Democratic Party works is the following. They will forgive any mistake, and they will refrain from canceling individuals who they believe help them achieve a political goal. So if anyone's going after President Trump, no matter what their past is, then it's just fine. And of course, when they make racist or bigoted statements in their past, of course they're forgiven because they're on the left. They don't run by the same vantage point, or they don't have a set value system. They're complete hypocrites. You can't be a hypocrite and judge others. This is a problem that I had, like, don't ever debate anybody on the left, because it's just, you might as well just like bang your head in the wall, or like, ram a 2x4 into your foot. It's actually going to be probably a lot more enjoyable than debating anyone with TDS. But derangement syndrome towards Trump. But they don't understand that, like, if you're trying to be morally superior, AOC does this all the time. And then, like, she makes statements, and Yad Vashem in Jerusalem has to refute her revisionist history. And I wrote about that in the Jerusalem Post. And still there's no, like, embarrassment or shame, because these people just revise, they engage in the most absurd and dangerous revisionist history for their own political purposes. But when you are a hypocrite, you cannot judge others. This is a basic, like, tenet of life. Okay? The whole point of if you want to judge and condemn others, you better make sure that you uphold the value system that you're leveling at your adversaries. You better make sure that you aren't a prime example of what you're accusing others of. But see, that's not the way Democrats work. Now they're going after Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Trump. They spent 4 years sowing division and distrust and calling Trump an illegitimate president and saying that he worked with Russia and saying that Putin interfered in the election and questioning why Trump in 2016 won. And it was fine. They used a Steele dossier, the definition of fake news, and it was fine. And then when President Trump should have created a national dialogue, they said baseless allegations, swept it under the rug, and now we can't talk about anything. And then people said, I want to make a message, and this is our house. That was the wrong thing to do on so many levels. You can't go into the Pentagon and say, hey, General, give me a cup of coffee. Doesn't work that way. And if you say, well, the left did it with federal buildings and city blocks in Seattle, there's a double standard. See, what President Trump should have realized is that there is a double standard. Democrats will allow fiery yet mostly peaceful. They'll allow $1 billion in property damage. They'll allow clashes with police officers for months on end. But they will utilize the tragedy that took place in Washington, D.C. for their own benefit. They'll go after law enforcement, then they'll say that we stand with law enforcement. They'll say believe with Kavanaugh, they won't believe with Tara Reade. They'll say the planet is going to end soon, here's a resolution, not legislation. They'll say Medicare for all, and then when you force them on it, or when Jimmy Dore wants to force a vote, they'll say, oh man, oh my God, this is really horrible. Why is he doing this? Well, you promised the left Medicare for all, but of course it's a racket. That's not even a Democratic. See, this is, if you happen to be on the left stumbling upon this, Medicare for all is not a Democratic Party policy. It's not even part of a value system. I used to think that I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post, the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. Now, I used to think that Bernie Sanders was the epitome of a liberal. He's not. He's not. He's a Green Party candidate that has a home within the Democratic Party because they utilize him. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was forced to resign for a reason. They utilize him to funnel left-leaning discontent and angst back into the Democratic Party. Why do you think AOC and Bernie Sanders are there? If they were ever true obstacles or thorns in the side of the Democratic Party, they'd be dealt with the way that Democrats always deal with people. Look what they did to Tulsi Gabbard. They called her a Russian operative. So it's not, and they were going after Bernie Sanders until he, decided to play ball eventually. Democrats crush and obliterate any opposition first on the left. Then they go after conservatives or Trump supporters or Trump. But President Trump was never the obstacle to Democrats. It was always the left. And then, Trump was just somebody that they obsessed over because he actually took political power away from them. But this whole thing with, John Bolton, first of all, the only reason that he was chosen as national security advisor is because Michael Flynn, who should have been President Trump's national security advisor, was set up and framed. So the biggest mistake President Trump did was to abandon Michael Flynn initially. He should never have done that. He should have called their bluff. Should have said, okay, well, what cards do you have? I'm not gonna fire my national security advisor. Why? Because you. And then they said, they made this elaborate thing. Well, he didn't do anything wrong. We have no clue. We know now the FBI wanted to entrap, basically go after Michael Flynn, force him out, and then have two national security advisors two or three national security advisors that were establishment individuals. Bolton being a Bush neoconservative type. So thank God President Trump didn't listen to him, because President Trump did not engage in a regime change. Bush, of course, did, and so did President Obama. That's a reason alone to vote for Trump compared to, in comparison to the other presidents. But Bolton was horrendous. He's never had a foreign policy decision that ever worked out. He always wanted the never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts that President Trump opposed. I don't know why. I think Trump probably just hired him to appease the neocons on the left and the right. Well, anyway, the whole point is Trump can't stand Bolton, and Bolton, of course, wrote a book. Well, where are the books about President Obama? Where are the books about Bush? That doesn't happen, you understand? It was only Trump. So now you have a national security attorney who helped prevent this book from being published. Why? Because the book has classified intelligence or talks about sensitive issues. See, again, that never happens. So that's why he's a Trump loyalist. Even though he would be a Biden loyalist or an Obama loyalist or a Bush loyalist, he would do the same thing if anyone else wrote the same type of book under those administrations. So there you go. What President Trump should have realized is there is a double standard. And he should have worked to circumvent, or not, he shouldn't have given them enough fuel to, like, he kept on taking a baseball bat and bashing a hornet's nest. And he was able for a long time to run away from the hornets. But if you do it 10, 15, 20 times, eventually those hornets are going to get you. You're not going to be able to run as fast the 20th time. And so he kept on just, getting them into a frenzy and a hysteria. Hollywood, media, the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN. He took that baseball bat and he just bashed this gigantic hornet's nest. And then they were all just even more apoplectic than they usually are, which is a lot. And at the end of the day, he wasn't able to run away from it because, he utilized Twitter. He didn't utilize Twitter in the long run in the manner that he should have. First of all, Twitter is a horrendous platform, and it's going to be MySpace of political media in a couple of years. They're going to go under in a couple. They're not. Facebook is like a behemoth. Twitter has $3.4 billion in debt, and its user base, it really is. They've actually alienated 74 million Americans and millions around the world. They banned President Trump. The only reason people go on Twitter, but what he did was all of his accomplishments. The reason that you should judge people not on their words, on their accomplishments, but now he's being judged on his words. Because he riled them up and got them so hysterical and in such a frenzy that they were incapable. They didn't want to address any of his accomplishments to begin with. But there were moments where he could have created a national dialogue. There were moments where he could have created, and especially in the past couple of months, a national debate, a national dialogue. The past year, he unfairly was blamed for the pandemic. He could have created a national dialogue for that also. To say, hey, this is not my fault. There were ways that he could have gone outside the box. He should have gone on Tim Pool. I swear to God, Joe Rogan. He should have gone on the top YouTube channels. He should have gone on MSNBC and CNN, sat down with them and said, look, he did the Jonathan Swan Axios. And then, Jonathan Swan, typical journalist, quote unquote, goes after Trump for per capita rates and then doesn't realize that the highest per capita rates, according to the New York Times, are in New York and New Jersey. And God bless the people of those states. But all the highest per capita rates in the country are run by Democratic states, blue states run by almost all Democrats. 8 of the top 12, last time I checked. And 7 of the top 10 states have the highest aggregate number of lives lost. Most of the lives lost in this country have been in blue states. And yet you have Cuomo and Phil Murphy and all these people circumventing blame. You realize Andrew Cuomo has a book on leadership? Do you understand this, the world we live in? He has a book on leadership lessons from the pandemic. This is a man who is directly responsible for tragedies in New York. For decisions that he's made that people said, oh my God, this directly led to lives lost. And he has a book out on leadership lessons. I mean, you couldn't get, like, the media is like a cocoon. Like, it coddles and, like, and you know, props up people. And it can also tear down people. Now, President Trump, his accomplishments should speak for themselves. But, like, here, where are the people? Where is President Trump himself saying, I didn't tell anyone to do anything the other day? Where is the public relations response to Democrats saying it's all his fault? Is anyone coming to this man's defense? He was president for 4 years. Is he coming to his own defense? He's been pretty silent about it. Maybe one thing here and there. And Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, I'm going to do a segment on Josh Hawley. I mean, this man should be on like a public relations offensive. Why did he support President Trump the past couple of months? Well, he needs to explain. And perhaps, and I think, there are valid reasons that he should talk about, or valid issues. Or at least talk about the reasons he supported President Trump. You don't just go ahead. You don't just engage in a course of action in politics and then shrivel up and shrink when they go out. Now you have people want him to be disbarred, and a hotel won't, have an event for him, and Simon & Schuster won't publish his book. And Josh Hawley should say, hey, look, you know what? You could disagree with me, but here are certain issues that, like, here's why I did what I did. And by the way, I didn't tell anyone to go do what they, commit illegal activity. I didn't tell anyone these things. It's not Trump's fault. It's not my fault. It's not Ted Cruz's fault. How about defending yourself, Josh Hawley? My God almighty. How about defending? I mean, Ted Cruz, he's not getting the same type. It's interesting. Ted Cruz isn't getting the same treatment as Josh Hawley is. That's interesting. I have to think about why. But why? I mean, Trump isn't defending himself. And you're letting Democrats just completely run away with the narrative. And then it's even the way it's written now. Even the way it's written now. Do you understand even the way it's written now? Well, of course, he compelled people. This is a fact. He did that. It's like in a court of law, they're not going after Trump in a court of law because his speech was protected by the First Amendment. That's why this is all political in nature, not legal, but they're speaking as if it's a done deal. It's a fact. He did this. Just like when they said he called the pandemic a hoax. He didn't call the pandemic a hoax. And he never said that. Ever. He was talking about the media reaction. Again, it's like he never said they were fined people. No. He said even in the CC, he was talking about people who wanted to keep statues up. He wasn't talking about the 1930s and 1940s Germans, and he even said that in the C-SPAN quote, and I'm not referring to those people. They should be condemned. But I mean, there's such a mythology around President Trump, and he fed it. Like, he could have simply, in hindsight's 2020. He was in a whirlwind from day one. So hindsight's 2020. But he had the platform to, in a strategic manner, combat their treachery. He didn't do so. He didn't do so. He was, a sledgehammer, a bulldozer, and it worked in 2015 and 2016. It might have worked even in 2017, but it didn't work in 2018. It didn't work in 2019 and 2020. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe to this channel, to my new Patreons. Thank you so very, very much. Your support is greatly appreciated, especially in this time. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to support my voice long term, my Patreon is below.